do good. Let your light shine bright. Let your light shine right. Respect your fellow man as you should. Take warning. You better take warning. Take warning. You better do good. Let your light shine bright. Let your light shine right. Respect your fellow man as you should. The evil that men do lives after them. The evil that men do lives after them. Your evil today will blight your tomorrow. So do good today and avoid your sorrow. Take warning. You better take warning. Take warning. You better do good. Let your light shine bright. Let your light shine right. Respect your fellow man as you should. Take warning. You better take warning. Take warning. You better do good. Let your light shine bright. Let your light shine right. Respect your fellow man as you should. The evil that men do lives after them. The evil that men do lives after them. Your evil today will blight your tomorrow. So do good today and avoid your sorrow. Take the message, everybody. Take warning. You better take warning. Take warning. You better do good. Let your light shine bright. Let your light shine right. Respect your fellow man as you should.
All right. Hey, guess what? Good evening as we get ready to kickstart the show this evening on 107.1 FM. Spread the word. Call your friends. Let your relatives, let everyone know that we have retired Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, or former Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, retired Rear Admiral Gary Best, Dr. Gary Best. He's also, he earned his PhD, a real PhD, unlike some of those guys with their honorary doctorate, doctorate. Good evening to all of you. It's Friday evening. Hey, share the link and we'll be back with our guest this evening, retired Rear Admiral Gary Best, with us.
Take warning. You better take warning. 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 Take warning. You better take warning.
Hello, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
Take warning. You better take warning. Take warning. You better do good. Let your light shine bright. Let your light shine right. Respect your fellow man as you should. Take warning. You better take warning. Take warning. You better do good. Let your light shine bright. Let your light shine right. Respect your fellow man as you should. The evil that men do lives after them. The evil that men do lives after them. Your evil today will blight your tomorrow. So do good today and avoid your sorrow. Take warning. You better take warning. Take warning. You better do good. Let your light shine bright.
All right, that's the take warning stuff is for those guys in Venezuela and Maduro. You know, Maduro has been a horrible, a miserable president, just like some that we know in Guyana. Horrible, miserable, and corrupt. Horrible, miserable, and corrupt. And they haven't been able to do much for the economy there in Venezuela. And because he has fallen short in that area by miles upon miles, this is what they do every elections time. They go to the border and they, as the guys would say, they pomposette themselves. That is what they do. They show off, they pomposette all manner of things in order to get the attention. They want attention. Maduro, known as the madman, he wants attention. That is all this is about, you know. Attention and attention and attention. All right. Now that he got the attention and they are preparing to go to the polls, it's just to basically turn up the blood, so to speak, of the Venezuelans. Turn the blood up and say, hey, you know, we're strong. We want Guyana. Guyana belongs to us and Bolivia, Simeon Bolivar. And we fought for Venezuela. And, you know, the ordinary Venezuelans who have been punishing under that nutcase Maduro, punishing. You go to Venezuela and you'll see exactly how the people are punishing. Cost of living high, everything, corruption, you name it, every single thing happening in Venezuela. Corruption upon corruption. The Venezuelans go by the border, they get jobs from some of our Guyanese people. We treat them nicely and all manner of things. But now it's, what is it? Elections time. He doesn't want to be kicked out, and I think he should go. He needs to go. He's an irresponsible president. He needs to go. This is a man who ruthlessly go after his political opponents, jail them, jail their family members. You know how I am with those sort of things, jailing opponents. You know how I am. And so I cannot support somebody like that. Ignore what is happening at the border and the spite and the vindictiveness. Ignore doesn't mean we got to just turn a blind eye. I'm not saying that. But this guy, Maduro, is just an absolute nutcase, if you ask me. This evening, we have former Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, retired Rear Admiral Gary Best, Dr. Gary Best. He's not just a doctor, you know, he's also a lawyer, former Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, former commandor, or they say commandor, of the, the Coast Guard, of the Guyana Defense Force. All manner of things. He is here this evening. And notice I didn't say politician, I didn't say anything yet. We're dealing with his profession and the years of service as a soldier, and then moved on to become an officer and head the Guyana Defense Force. Gary Best, and my executive producer, is telling me that the retired Rare Honor Admiral is already in studio with us, guys. So share the link. Let's get ready to rock and roll. We got some serious business to talk about. Take a look at the. This is not like from the Salvation Army, you know. Take a look at the medals, the years of service to his country, years upon years of service, and who is more qualified to talk about the border dispute with regards to the threats, so-called threats, and military folks at our border than a general of the Guyana Defense Force, Rear Admiral. He's here. We have others, but the others are quiet. For some reason, they're quiet. I don't know why. Neither am I going to ask Mr. Gary Best why his colleagues are so quiet. We have others. We have Atherley. We have my former neighbor, Collins. We have a whole bunch of, including Mr. Granger as well. Lots of people are very quiet. And the Guyanese people don't need that. And so let me see some of your comments quickly before we get Mr. Raul Chalmers. Please don't, this is not a comedy show, please. This is not a comedy show. Don't mention that comedian, Roshan Batiga Pips. That guy is a security guard. And he gave himself those stripes. So don't mention that guy. Good night to you, Raul. Good night to all of you, GT Rudyard, the whole crew. Share the link. Don't let me have to tell you guys that again. It's like I got to beg you guys, and I don't like doing that often. All right, let's get straight to our guest this evening. Good evening to you.
Hi, Mark. Good evening.
Really good to have you on. I know this it's Friday evening, and we don't want to take up much of your time, but we're going to get straight to business this evening. First, let's begin with how have you been, sir?
I've been good. Thanks for having me on the program. I've been good. I can say that.
Yeah, well, we're glad that you've been good, even under the circumstances. We're hearing lots of things. The cost of living is so high. I don't know if it's affecting you, but people are hardly going to Border Market or even Stabroek or Port Morant Market or Skellen Market. And even when they go, those who go, cost of living is so high. How is it affecting you and the people around you, sir?
It's affecting all of us. It's affecting me. It's affecting all of us because, depending on your income, your expenses tend to mirror your income. So a person with a smaller income might be living in a smaller apartment with expenses. A person with a higher income is living in maybe a larger place with higher expenses. So the cost of living is affecting all of us. And there's no reason for us to have this exponentially high cost of living. But that is another discussion.
Another discussion indeed. But before we move on with our discussion, let me take this time on behalf of all of us to congratulate you. You just got another thing. What is it? Not a medal, but this time it's an academic medal. You
Yes.
are now the holder of a legitimate PhD. Congratulations, doctor.
Thank you very much, and thanks. Thanks. So many people have congratulated me, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful to be able to complete that journey also, and to continue to serve my country. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's something that you're going to have to explain to us because we have never seen this in the history of the Guyana Defense Force. And correct me if I'm wrong. We are accustomed to Brigadier General. We're accustomed to General. We're accustomed to Brigadier. But this is the first time, I believe, in 2007 when you were sworn in as the new Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force. Your title there is Rear Admiral. Is that because you came from the Coast Guard? Explain, please.
That is correct. There's a different rank structure in the Coast Guard, yes. If you're in the Coast Guard, you have different rank structure, and there is an equivalency with the infantry officers, So a Rear Admiral is equivalent to a Major General. And that's the highest rank you can get in the Guyana Defense Force, yes. But it's a coastie, yes. We coasties have different ranks.
Thank you so much. And again, another one on your belt. But before we move on, lots of people Lots of people who probably may have been reading, they saw Gary Best, they know that you were head of the Guyana Defense Force, I believe from 2007 to 2000, when was it, 13?
13, correct.
2013. Yeah, that's almost 5 to 6 years spent as head of the Guyana Defense Force in some very, very tough times indeed. But who is Gary Best? Talk to us about Gary Best, the little boy growing up. Was this always what you wanted to do, become a soldier?
Well, it's a long story and a short story. I have to make it very short. I Actually, when I joined the Guyanese Defense Force, there were some influencers. Indeed, I had an uncle in the Defense Force, but more particularly, I had applied for jobs across Guyana after I'd finished school and private studies. And the agency that replied positively to me was the Guyanese Defense Force. The others had me on file. And I joined the Guyanese Defense Force primarily because I was looking for a job. And lo and behold, I recognized I was good at it and I made it a career. So that's the essence of me joining the Guyanese Defense Force.
Otherwise, I
To
probably
get a
would have seen.
job because I need to have a job, and but my mother would have had a lot of challenges with me because I came from a single parent. My mother raised all her children by herself, and we came from tenants, 6 apartments in a building, different brothers and sisters living. So we had communal toilets, communal bathrooms in Campbellville, John Street, Campbellville. And then we moved into self-help housing under the then Feed, Clothe, and Housing Nation of the People's National Congress. And that 2-bedroom house was a mansion when we first got in there. It's my commitment to the People's National Congress. I can't forget what they did for my family and what they did for so many thousands of Guyanese, and hence my commitment to the party. But we're not talking politics today, as you
Absolutely. I was going to say, there you go, put your political cap on. We're glad that the Army, the Guyana Defense Force, responded to your application. Otherwise, who knows, you would have been a prison guard or a prison head of the prison service, and we would have become good friends there in prison too, as well, with me, you being the officer and me being. All right, so 19 minutes after 9 o'clock, my name is Mark Benchop. We have retired Rear Admiral of the Guyana Defense Force, Chief of Staff, Gary Best with us. Dr. Best is with us. So you're now a doctor. You're also a lawyer. Do you practice law?
I missed that part.
Yeah, you're now that you're a holder of a PhD, you're also a lawyer. Do you practice law?
No, I didn't start a practice because that would require full-time attention to clients. But I do provide free legal service to members within my party, people in different parts of the country when I visit, groups, villages. People have different legal requirements. I pass on that legal advice to them for free. But if I were to open a practice, I don't think I'd be able to do the other community service that I do, which is low-key and not on Facebook. But I do a lot of work in the communities with a lot of ordinary Guyanese. So I don't actively practice, but provide legal advice when I can.
Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate that. Dr. Gary Best with us this evening. Let's move over now, finding out what's happening.
I teach constitutional law, and I teach constitutional law at UG. So that's another way of giving back.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Let's get straight down into what's happening there in Venezuela. Let's begin first with this Venezuelan general is saying it is the son of Venezuela is born in the Essequibo. It is our land, and in the conscience of Venezuelans rests the hope of seeing it definitively without claims, and blah, 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 blah. This is from this statement from the Venezuela's Minister of Defense. What is your take on all of this coming from the Minister of Defense, sir?
Well, the Minister of Defense is obviously misguided and has not paid any attention to the history of this issue, a controversy created by Venezuela. But if you look at the Minister of Defense's statement carefully, you'd recognize that he is saying that Essequibo was not part of Venezuela at the time they were fighting for independence. So that is acknowledgement that Essequibo was never part of Venezuela. Additionally, if you check the Essequibo region, you don't find Spanish names. You find Dutch names, you find French names, and you find English names. At no point in time Venezuela ever occupied the Essequibo region or anything east of Essequibo. So he's acknowledging that Essequibo is part of Guyana, and they were fighting for it during their war of independence against Spain. So the goodly gentleman is out of step with the reality and the history of this this situation. I don't want to call it a controversy because from our teachings in the GDF, Venezuela has a dispute with Guyana. We have no dispute with them. But I want to remind the general and remind Guyanese that the sun rises in the Quarantine and sets in the Venemu River, right up to Punta Playa. That is Guyana. And that is enshrined in our constitution. So I think Guyanese, when they see this statement, should not be worried because he's totally off track. There's no history to support what this statement, and all the history is on our side in relation to the boundaries that separate Guyana from Venezuela.
But you're
And that's
saying
my
that
first take on that.
yeah, Guyanese should not be worried. And I agree with you, but they are worried, especially when they see big tanks and soldiers, Venezuelan soldiers, are at our borders. As a former head of the Guyana Defense Force, what's going through the minds of even the current head of the Defense Force and the soldiers there, assuming that they have soldiers at the border? What's usually going through the minds of soldiers and officers when these sort of reckless things happen by Venezuela at our border?
Well, I was saying, Mark, and to the viewers, there's some amount of anxiety, obviously. They're all human beings. We've been tested many times before. And there's concern, by the families of those soldiers who are serving on the borders. Yes, we have troops on our borders. In the context of the buildup of Venezuelan troops on the border, well, I know if you know, Ancoco Island is an island in the Venemu River, and the land border passes through Ancoco Island. Half of the island, or approximately half, belongs to Guyana and half belongs to Venezuela. Well, at independence, the Venezuelans occupied Ancoco Island, including the eastern half rather, which belongs to Guyana. And Guyana had protested that occupation since 1966. So we've been occupied by Venezuela since then. That is part of Guyana, and that is part of the litigation before the ICJ, that Venezuela has continuously violated the sovereignty of Guyana by occupying that island. Now, when troops move closer to the border, whether it's in the Venemu River itself or on Ancoco Island, it raises the status quo, of course. It raises the ante, it raises the anxiety, and there are certain procedures that the Guyana Defense Force would employ. Now, the first line of defense, and the most important line of defense in Guyana, in the context of Guyana, small economy, limited resources, is diplomatic. We fight a diplomatic battle, a battle on the diplomatic front. That's where we fight our battle. Our troops are trained to identify aggression, identify exactly where it is located. So when we make statements internationally, we are accurate. It doesn't mean that the soldiers are not prepared to defend Guyana, because that's what they have to do. We trained to do that. If there are physical troops on the border, they're trained to defend them to the extent that they can hold the enemy and then determine his location rather, and get that information out internationally, which will lead us into the diplomatic effort by the state. And therefore we expect, and I would expect, that the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Foreign Ministry will be very active internationally. I recall in the 80s and the 70s that we'll have our foreign ministers in all the capitals of the world, most of the capitals of the world rather, important capitals. So I would expect to see the Foreign Affairs Minister at the African Union speaking on this issue, United Nations speaking on this issue, in South America, Brasilia speaking on this issue, CARICOM speaking on the issue, even Havana, Cuba, which is a good friend of Venezuela, speaking on this issue, Moscow speaking about this issue, because that is the battle we have to fight on the international front, on the diplomatic front, is where we have our greatest battle with Venezuela. And we've been successful over the decades in making that case internationally against Venezuela's aggression on the diplomatic front. I look forward to see more active action on the diplomatic front. And at the national level, I would think that the parliament, there should be a joint session of parliament where all the parliamentarians, all the elected representatives of this country come and speak to the nation and speak to the international community about Venezuela aggression and giving that unswerving commitment to defend this country, in addition to the president himself addressing the nation on this issue. So these are all efforts can be done nationally, regionally, and internationally. That is our battle plan. That is our fight. That's how we fight Venezuela. And that's how we've been doing it for decades. And this time around, I think we're missing a few of those main steps. I expect to see much more.
A lot more indeed. We're not seeing that sort of leadership coming from those who occupy the office of the president there and other agencies within the government. We see Irfan Ali is dancing his way out in Canada, nothing beneficial for Guyana, no proper statement, no proper press conference, absolutely nothing, just sound bites. How dangerous is that, the silence coming from the regime?
Well, I think optics are very important. What the nation sees, what the people see becomes a sense of confidence that they will have in what is happening in the country. So the anxiety can be reduced by the presence of politicians, in this case, the president and the government of the day, instilling that confidence in us through their presence and through what they say in the main media. So I would agree that that anxiety can be reduced. And as I said, I expect to see much more active actions on the part of the government of the day. And that is not, it doesn't appear that way to me. I think the government is depending on what has been done before, but we have to be active all the time. We have to be active. We have to recognize. We have a national song concerning Guyana, a national song by the Trade Winds, which says "Not a blade of grass." That's a national song. We have enshrined in our Constitution, Article 33, which says every citizen is the duty of every citizen to defend the state. We need to talk to those things. We have concepts like defense in depth. We developed a concept of defense in depth in the 80s to defend Guyana.
Sorry about that, Rear Admiral, but it says here, Article 33, indeed, in our Constitution, maybe a lot of people don't know, it says it is the duty of every citizen to defend the state. Not just those who are officially in the Guyana Defense Force, but it's the duty of every citizen. You think a lot of folks out there, especially those folks who love to talk down about Guyana and so forth, do you think they're aware that they have a right to defend the country?
I don't think many persons are aware of it, but it's more than a right, it's a duty. It means the state can call upon Guyanese men and women and Guyanese resources, call upon those resources to defend the state. And when I mentioned defense in depth, which was a concept that was developed by the previous government in the 80s, it meant that all national resources and national efforts will go towards defending the country. So your frontline defense obviously will be your troops, your active troops, but your second and third line defenses will come from the rest of the citizens. People will be called upon to perform different types of semi and paramilitary duties to defend the state. You can't be a Guyanese and not have a duty to defend the state. And we put it into the Constitution, Article 33, and it cannot be removed from the Constitution unless it's a two-thirds majority in Parliament. So I think Guyanese should recognize the importance of this article and this duty upon them by the state for themselves and their families, and be conscious of it and recognize that the Defense Force should recognize that it is not alone in this fight. The rest of the Guyana is with it, and Guyanese should recognize that the Defense Force is not alone, and they have a role to play in supporting the Guyana Defense Force. So those resources can be commanded by the state. I'm talking about national resources, production facilities. We're talking about switching your production lines to other type of lines to support defense. We're talking about national transportation systems that can be commanded to defend the state. And that is how important that Article 33 is in the context of Guyana. So we have a holistic approach to defense. It's not only the Guyana Defense Force.
Unfortunately, we're not seeing that by those who occupy the highest level of office there in Guyana, unfortunately. But let us take our listeners back to when President Bornum was there in office and Venezuela was misbehaving. As always, Venezuela misbehaves. And this is what we call leadership back then. And I want our listeners, please, Mr. Best, Dr. Best, and I feel comfortable addressing you as that. It's no honorary degree, and even if you have anybody who has an honorary degree, sorry, I'm not putting them down, but they must know how to use it. You cannot have an honorary doctorate and be called doctor. So, anyways, let's get to what President Burnham said at that time. This is what you call leadership, and it's lacking right now.
At one point of Guyana's western border with Venezuela, the Renamo River flows into the Cuyuni River, and there is an island at this junction called Ankoko Island of about 2 to 3 square miles. According to the map in existence since 1904, the border runs roughly through the center of Ankoko Island from north to south, so that the western part of the island is Venezuelan and the eastern Guyanese. For some time, in fact during last month, a number of Venezuelans were crossing onto the Guyanese side and have since then been carrying out certain works on our territory. The report of this came to the notice of the government a few days ago only, and an inspection party consisting of senior officials and 2 senior police officers visited the island the day before yesterday, Wednesday the 12th of October. This party verified and confirmed the earlier report received through unofficial channels. In the opinion of the government, this intrusion by Venezuelans constitutes a breach of the Geneva Agreement entered into between the governments of the United Kingdom and Venezuela on the 17th of February 1966, to which agreement the government of Guyana is now a party. And today, I have sent a cable to Dr. Iribarren Borges, the Foreign Minister of Venezuela, strongly protesting the intrusion of Venezuelan personnel onto Guyanese territory and asking that immediate steps be taken by the government of Venezuela to ensure the immediate withdrawal of all such personnel. I have this morning informed the leader of the opposition of the situation and held discussions with him. Meanwhile, I await a reply from the Venezuelan government. I consider it my duty to inform the nation of this latest development and to assure you that every step is being taken to retain our territorial sovereignty by peaceful means. Your government proposes to abide by the terms of the Geneva Agreement and is hopeful that the government of Venezuela will do likewise. You're asked to remain calm and to await further information. Long live Guyana.
Dr. Best, you heard at the time that people need leadership. President Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham showed leadership, something that is lacking as of now. All we heard from the regime is that the Foreign Affairs Minister, Mr. Todd, spoke with the Venezuelan ambassador to Guyana. For the Venezuelan ambassador to Guyana, explain why the Venezuelan soldiers are at the border intruding in Guyana's territory. And according to Mr. Todd, the Venezuelan ambassador to Guyana said, oh, they're just trying to prevent illegal mining. Your take on the lack of approach. We heard what President Burnham and his approach then. We're not seeing any such thing here at all. What do you have to say to the Minister of Foreign Affairs right now?
But let me first say that to lead the way Forbes Burnham led, I mean, he's incomparable. I know it's big shoes to fill, but what that statement would do, even now as you play it, it brings a sense of calm when you listen to it. A sense of calm coming from a leader telling you, listen, have confidence in me and have confidence in my government. We will deal with this matter in Venezuela on your behalf. That is the sense we're not necessarily getting, that this thing is being taken and being led by the president, the current president, on behalf of the Guyanese people. I think that the president might be best served by taking this entire issue front on, and like, again, speaking to the nation in this sense, so the nation can have confidence. Additionally, I think there should be talks between the president and the leader of the opposition, not only a phone call, but discussions, so people can see them talking and discussing this issue. And that will provide more confidence in the nation that the two main political parties are together on this issue, and that Guyana is together on this issue. So there is an absence of that exquisite leadership that we were accustomed to. And President Ali could only learn from President Burnham at the time when he made this speech and seek to emulate it. I would recommend that to President Ali, that he seek to emulate the way Burnham handled the Venezuela controversy in relation to Essequibo. There's a lot to be learned from how it was handled at that time.
Thank you, and well said, Mr. Dr. Gary Best. Well said. 38 minutes after 9 o'clock. If you're now joining us, we have retired Rear Admiral, a former Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force with us. We're talking about the border situation with Venezuela and why Venezuela is misbehaving again, and how President Burnham handled the situation back then. And unfortunately, we're not seeing that sort of leadership at all. But you have somebody who you hand over the baton to, the Guyana Defense Force, when you retired in 2013, Brigadier Mark Phillips, who became the Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force. He is now, quote unquote, the Prime Minister of Guyana. He is also very silent. I wish if you can just offer a few words, because as we see here, Rear Admiral Best tells new Chief of Staff, be strong and stand your ground. You're smiling. Talk to us a little bit as to why Brigadier Mark Phillips, is so quiet today.
Well, I would just repeat what I said then to the Prime Minister Phillips, to be strong and stand your ground. At the end of the day, there are issues that we have to unite on nationally, and defense is one, and defense of our territory is one that we must unite nationally on it. I think that in the context of Guyana, we must be able to speak on this issue unaffraidly, to speak on the issue of defense, because it concerns all of us. It's a bipartisan or a multi-partisan issue. It doesn't require a party position at all. So I would commend to the Prime Minister to speak on the issue. Let us hear your thoughts on this issue. Let us recognize that wherever we come from, whether it's from the military or from different political parties, we stand and we hold one head when it comes towards this strong arm tactics and saber rattling by Venezuela in relation to our dear Essequibo, which where the sun sets in the Venezuela River. So I will commend that to the Prime Minister. He's a friend of mine, so I'm sure he will listen to my advice on this particular issue. I would hope that he would listen to my advice on this particular issue.
Whether they will give him permission, my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience would say, giving him advice is one. Whether they'll allow him to speak is another. But it's shameful that the former Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, Brigadier Mark Phillips, is so quiet on the issue. Not only he is the quiet one, the current head of the Guyana Guyana Defense Force, Omar Khan. Brigadier Omar Khan is himself very quiet, silent. We're not seeing these people. We don't know what is happening. And again, optics tell a lot of good stories, but we're not seeing the optics there at all. Your message to Omar Khan, Brigadier Omar Khan.
Well, he's got his hands full as chief of staff, no doubt. He's got to rally the troops and raise and keep the morale high of those troops within the Ghanaian Defense Force, and particularly those persons he has on the border, right? So, as a former chief of staff, I know that's a telling task. The military is an extension of politics in many instances. Some great philosophers and military writers talk about the military being an extension of politics, and the military to be in step and in line with the political directive. I can't say what are those specific political directives, but we all pay allegiance to the Constitution as officers. That's our allegiance to the Constitution. I think that the Chief of Staff, current Chief of Staff, will recognize that the allegiance is to the Constitution more importantly. Yes, there is a specific allegiance to the Commander-in-Chief, but the Constitution trumps all of that. And I'm sure that the Chief of Staff is quite aware of that. We all aware as members of the military at the time that we hold an important role to play in society as one of the last bastions of democracy. The court, as you know, is the upper threshold of democracy with any nation state that is democratic. The final decisions come from the courts, and if that falls down, then it falls on the military to hold the country together until we have different government and new governance. So it's an important role to play, and I think all the chiefs of staff that I've known have recognized that role. I learned from them, and I'm sure he would have learned from others. So it's not an easy task. I would say to him that you have your instruments of command, you have good conventions from the previous chief, you have the history of the Ghanaian Defense Force on your side, you understand military strategy and tactics, and the nation must come first in whatever you do in relation to this defense issue. Your country must come first. You must be serving the country, and the country not serving you.
On the issue of that and understanding what's happening at the border, you heard President LFS Burnham said that he sent his relevant personnel out there. They came back, they gave him a report. He got a better understanding as to what's. So he's giving the nation, or he gave, the nation, a ball by ball commentary as to what is taking place and calming the nation down. Do you think the intelligence unit of the Guyana Defense Force is strong in order to gather intelligence as to what is happening? We know they gather intelligence about political opponents, but what about what is happening at our border?
But yes, the intelligence in the Guyana Defense Force is strong enough because we are also an interim bank. And I don't want to go further than that, but if you're on board on the borders, there are different ways of gathering information concerning what is happening in Venezuela. So there is a system of information gathering. The question is, where is the information? I'm sure the information will be channeled upwards, and how the information is used. I can't speak to that, but yes, to answer your question, we are capable of having the information. There are many ways of gathering information on troop movement, capabilities, among other things, of the Venezuelans, and I don't want to go into military strategy here as to how the Venezuelans intend to fight with us or we defend ourselves, right? But we have a defense force. What we can do is increase that defense capability, and that's something we can do because we have more resources coming into the country. So I would like to see that we increase our defense capability. We're not an offensive force, and therefore we need to increase our eyes and ears. There are different types of resources you can acquire to increase our eyes and ears as a defense force. We have a multi-billion-dollar resource offshore to protect as a nation. So that's one thing that the Coast Guard can do as part of the defense force. We have also other issues, like I said, of the border protection. Again, we can invest in our air guard and ensure we have long-range capability of acquiring information, protecting intrusion into our airspace. And those are all defense mechanisms. I think that part of these big budgets that we're going to get in future must deal with increasing our defense capability. What's the purpose of having increased resources when you can't protect them? So I think I would say that the budget is there's a lot of misallocation in terms of prioritizing what is really important for Guyana. And I think we can increase our defense capability. I expect and hope that we can do that defense capability be increased. And usually when there's saber rattling in Venezuela, we always get a little something in the east. We must be mindful of that. If you check the history, when we have a lot of saber rattling from Venezuela, there's always a little bit something coming from the east. And we have to be mindful as a nation too that our eastern border also doesn't come under a threat, so to speak.
And the eastern border you're speaking of is Suriname is also claiming a piece of.
Yeah, which is an active claim.
Yeah.
So we tend to recognize that. While diplomacy is good, of course, and we don't disagree with that, and it's our armor bearer. We still have a concept of defense in Guyana where we wouldn't arm ourselves to match Venezuela. It will require too much of our limited resources, but we'll have parity with with our neighbor Suriname. We have parity, so at least that's the concept. We want to maintain that parity so that that's a détente between ourselves and them. And Brazil is no real threat, at least not now to us. They haven't been threatening us. Venezuela is a real threat. So therefore, if we have that sort of military calculus where we increase our defense, have parity with Suriname, increase our defense capability so that we can understand what is happening in Venezuela more accurately, more timely, and depend on Brazil as a big partner who doesn't want to see any major change in borders. That sort of military diplomacy will help us. In addition to the Minister of Foreign Affairs moving to the various capitals and having direct talks with our allies out there, bringing the case to them.
We're not seeing that at all. 48 minutes after 9 o'clock, Rear Admiral, retired Chief of Staff, former Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force. I want you, sir, Dr. Best, to touch on this as a military guy. How dangerous, because lots of Guyanese are saying that this is dangerous, this is bad. What is your take, sir?
This is an interesting one. I saw it myself. I know the national language of Guyana is English. That is our national language, not Spanish. I don't know at what point in time, on what authority we move to Spanish. I would think we need legislation really to determine that we should have a second language called Spanish, being on vehicles and so to speak. I think it sends some mixed signals to me. It sends mixed signals to us and to many persons. It gives a sense as if we're pandering to a group of persons, a specific group of persons. So that is also a concern. We have other ethnicities here. We have Haitians, at least those who are able to remain in Guyana, and we've never placed French on the police vehicle. So I think English is a national language, and we should continue with English, unless we have bipartisan support where the elected representatives come together and go back to the communities, and we all agree that we should have Spanish as a second language. I don't particularly like the fact that we have police here on the Guyana Police Force when English is a national language in this country.
All right. Recently, we saw that the guy who wiggled his way back into power, Barra Jagdeo, said, well, he's defending this statement he made a while back, and many folks are saying that it was some sort of secret negotiation or some sort of secret deal that was about to happen. This is what it says here in 2015. Make concession to Venezuela, Jagdeo. Flouts ceding maritime space. You were, at that point in time, you were chief of staff. No, you weren't chief of staff. Sorry about that. Mark Phillips was. But as a former military guy, how do you take this? A senior politician, Jagdeo was actually in the opposition when he said that. He negotiated with Maduro and Chavez. How dangerous is this statement, Dr. Best?
Well, I would say it's an interesting statement. The context of the then opposition leader by Jagdeo making that statement. I wouldn't say I fully understand the context, but what I would say is that any change to the borders of Guyana would require a referendum. That is, it has to go to the people of this country to determine if we're going to change those borders. That's Article 2 of the Guyana Constitution. Article 2 of the Guyana Constitution specifies and shows specifically the borders of this country. And we have, and in addition to that, that's in the 1980 Constitution. The 1966 Constitution also speaks to the borders of this country. So both the 1966 and I know you have the 1980 Constitution speaks about Guyana's territory. And only Parliament, Article 2, is embedded in the Constitution, and only a referendum can change what Article 2 says. So any president or head of state who speaks on behalf of opening a space to Venezuela, to the Caribbean, or to anywhere, and can only speak, it has no substance because only a referendum can change the borders of Guyana. So that would be my own comment on that. It's just speak, and it's just chat, and it's just talk, it's just noise, but it cannot be become anything more than that unless that government brings it to a referendum and asks the people of this country to agree to giving Venezuela an outlet to the Atlantic, to the Caribbean Sea, or any part of our territory will have to go to a referendum. And that is something we must recognize and understand, that it rests with Guyanese to determine whether or not it will cede any territory or add any territory. Because we check the legislation, we can add territory. One would ask, what was the strategic intention of this particular article when it was written by the late great architects of this constitution? And I think they were thinking ahead, looking at hundreds of years ahead. Guyana as a nation that will build itself and become great. So that is entrenched in the constitution. It can't be removed. And I would say it's just a lot of noise. It's just diplomatic speak, perhaps, different way we can describe it. But it cannot be actualized by any government unless it goes to a referendum and we agree to change the borders of our country. To that extent, I think it's mute.
Such thoughts or opinions are not considered just reckless. It is treasonous. Lots of people do believe that it is treasonous what Jack Deere said there. To basically, he is willing to give a piece of Guyana to Venezuela. Do you see it as treasonous?
Well, I don't think he has that authority at all. And the fact that we have in the Constitution the borders set in the Constitution, and only a referendum can change those borders, it makes the statement, like I said, completely mute. I mean, one can attach treason to the statement. We can attach many other words to the statement. It's disloyalty to the statement. One can attach all of that. But when, again, I don't know what was in his head at the time, but the fact that we have in the Constitution very clear language about the borders, and to make a statement like that is either there's I don't know if there's any sort of lack of understanding of what the Constitution said, ignorance of it, or perhaps notwithstanding that, making a play to the Venezuelans because the Venezuelans may not understand our Constitution. I would think the Venezuelans would have read our Constitution and understand it, as we have looked at their Constitution in the military, when we study military politics, and we understand their Constitution too. And one of the challenges not only the challenges, one of the things we've always felt when we look at the Bolivarian Republic, that we didn't see a Bolivarian Republic being aggressive land grabbing because Simon Bolivar was a liberator, not a conqueror. And in the Chavez regime, that was something we felt in the geopolitical sphere. But we see now the saber rattling coming very often from Maduro. So in my mind, and this is now speaking purely from international relations and analyzing that, I have a great challenge with whether President Maduro is a Bolivarian, because Bolivar was a liberator, not a conqueror. So I have great difficulty in whether he is really living up to the concept of being a Bolivarian. Additionally, I might add at this point in time, there's a lot of recent ease of sanctions against Venezuela, so the Chevron could begin to start their pumps in Venezuela. There's Venezuela's serious economic crisis. So that is something to put into the political calculus now, with the role of the U.S. That the U.S. is going to play in relation to easing sanctions in Venezuela. So again, Chevron is there, and Chevron is likely to start trying to restart something that has been dormant for a lot of years. So again, that is something that we have to focus on. It's more oil coming out whenever it comes out, plus ours. What did this mean for geopolitics? Is the saber rattling only directed at that? Or is it a two-prong attack? We try to get our oil pumping and then to occupy Essequibo. Is that it? We have to be conscious of the fact. I made the point also that we have to be careful that we don't have second and third generation Spanish-speaking Guyanese claiming that they want to be part of Venezuela. I made that point in an article. That is also important for Guyanese to understand, and that goes to our citizenship laws and regulations, goes to our constitution, and these are things we need to sit and discuss at the bipartisan level and have a position for Guyana. You see, the Constitution is the best bipartisan document we have. Because this Constitution is the Constitution for Guyana. What a government policy, many government policies are not government policies for Guyana. It might be a government policy just for a few people in Guyana. That's a big difference. And that's a challenge we have here.
57 minutes after 9 o'clock. You did mention the easing up of the sanctions and so forth by the U.S. The opposition members now get to play a role. They went over to Barbados a couple of days ago. They struck some sort of deal. The U.S., the Biden administration said, look, you guys, to Maduro, you got to stick to this deal or we're going to reinstate the sanctions and so forth and so on. And Chevron is about to head back in there and do their thing. And suddenly Maduro thought it was best or good strategy. In my mind, it's bad strategy. Soldiers at the border, provoking a situation in Guyana. What's going through the mind of Maduro right now?
Well, it's a hard fight to get into, but I think he's desperate. He's desperate for economic victory in the country. There is let me put it this way. I mean, there isn't food in the shelves in the Venezuelan supermarket in many parts of Venezuela. Just the rich seem to get by. I think Maduro wants to get food on those shelves so he can feed his people. I think that's a big challenge. And maybe there's a deal set with him and the US for maybe one more presidential term, free and fair elections. That's the main deal, that he will make concessions to the electoral system so the elections can be free and fair. And we as a nation should look at that also, because we need electoral reform in Guyana also, so the elections can be free and fair. So that is something also we should look at when it comes to Guyana. So on the part of Maduro, I think he wants to have food on the shelves so he can feed his people and be considered a popular president. But maybe he has just one more term remaining in Venezuela. So I say at this point in time, within his brain, within his mind, is really a chance of survival, and so he can feed his people and don't go down as maybe one of the worst presidents of Venezuela. Because no stretch of imagination can he fill Chavez's shoes or even those presidents before Chavez, in my opinion, of course.
Recently, we saw quite a few Venezuelans, and here's a video. We'd like to get your opinion on this, the manner in which the Venezuelans, and at least I don't take an anti-immigrant position at all, but the manner in which the Venezuelans have landed in Guyana and the treatment, the way they were treated by those who are in the relevant authorities in terms of screening these folks. Your take on how they arrived in Guyana and the fact that they were just basically taken to the police station and let loose, and that's it. Your take from a military standpoint.
Well, that's an illegal landing in Guyana, of course. That's not a port of entry. So it is a concern and must be a concern to us. I read a statement, I think, came from Minister Ben, that they leave Venezuela and they go offshore to a platform, and from a platform offshore, they then come to Guyana. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think they'll go into the Atlantic and then come back here. But that's what he said. But what is important for me, what stood out for me, is that they were able to be processed so quickly and integrate into the Guyanese society. So in my view, immigration authorities knew they were coming. So when they landed, they could have processed them that fast and get them to melt into the Guyanese society. But that's not a port of entry. And the second thing is that we don't know who is a refugee. We don't know who might be fleeing Venezuela for other reasons. You remember the Marian boat lift between Cuba and Florida, and the Americans subsequently accused Fidel Castro of emptying his jails in Florida. So we need to be able to separate a refugee from an economic migrant or a migrant from a refugee. We need to screen and process them. We need to take time. Guyanese need to see what is happening with people coming into to the country illegally, because we had the Haitians who landed legally in this country and had many challenges in staying in Guyana. And even those Haitians who wanted to move on to Brazil and then on to the United States. So again, it doesn't look good for Guyana, as though we're picking and choosing here, and that's not nice. And secondly, I'm going back to the original point, when persons land in this country in that manner, we need to process them in a center, and it needs to be open. It needs journalists need to have access to that center. The information needs to be public, so the Guyanese can understand what is happening. And there's no UN convention that would allow a country to be overrun, its population to be overrun by refugees or economic migrants. There's no convention that allows that. Guyana has a duty and responsibility to ensure that its 800,000 population, to which it has a budget, to which there is a budget attached, a budget which in many instances is not sufficient because it's misallocated, especially the health sector, which is misallocated. So we don't want a population that could overwhelm our services. So even though we may say, yes, we have some economic migrants, we need to put a cap on that, a cap on the economic migrants, a cap on the refugees, so that we don't overrun our services and we don't have a population that can threaten the already difficult circumstances of Guyanese who must be considered first in this country. So to answer your question, I think the authorities had advanced knowledge they were going to land there. They processed it very quickly, and then they melted into the Guyanese society. And therefore, we don't know who came into the country. We don't have those answers, and I hope, I saw that the opposition is going to ask those questions in Parliament. We need to know. The government has a duty and responsibility to provide information. It's not a privilege. Information is a duty. That's why you're elected. You're elected to provide information to the people. It's not a privilege. So I would expect that this information comes out, and then there's a cap on how many Venezuelans will come here. We can't have them overrunning our social services. The health services is almost in a crisis in Guyana. We have a lot of private hospitals developing, and more emphasis is going toward private hospitals, and the health services are under pressure for Guyanese, much as if you bring Venezuelans in. So yes, we can be open and kind to our Venezuelan brothers and sisters, but we have to put a cap on it. And maybe we've passed that cap. We wouldn't know unless we get the right numbers. Maybe we pass that cap, where we can take more Venezuelans coming. We need to close our borders right now. Perhaps it's best to close the borders and get an assessment of what is happening in the country, and then we take it further. We do it bipartisan. We look at it collectively as a people. Maybe that might be the best option, because I hear rumors of thousands and thousands of Venezuelans all over Guyana. If that is true, then we're already overwhelmed. And that is not fair to the Guyanese who live here and make a living here, who live in this country. It's not fair. So I don't think that is being managed properly. The government is withholding information, and it raises all kinds of questions. All kinds of questions, whether it's political, whether it's seeking political advantage. It raises all kinds of questions, creates all sorts of doubts in the minds of Guyanese. And it's not good enough. The government, it's not good enough for the government to deal with this issue. And I trust better sense will prevail where this is concerned. This is a national issue.
Better sense should prevail indeed. Some of the points made there, discussed with my occasional sidekick on here, Wayne Caesar, made some very valid points that you yourself have made this evening. Just want to touch on the concern that Guyanese have, and legitimate concerns, is that the PPP regime will use the thousands, assuming that there are thousands of Venezuelan nationals currently in Guyana, to pad the voters list. How concerned are you about that, sir?
Well, I do hear it. There are a lot of suspicions concerning the list, and the last list, an exceptionally high number of persons on the list, and we have some decisions out to the court that still baffling. these decisions still baffling that came out of the court. And we have to trust the court's judgment. I mean, that's generally you go to the court, you get to the highest court, you have to trust the judgment of the court. I think one of the challenges we had is when we took residency out of the Constitution in the Constitution reform in 2000s. Residency was a prerequisite, and that came out of the Constitution. When I say we, I mean the two parliaments, the two, the opposition and the parliament. We took residency out of the Constitution. I think we exposed ourselves. To go back and determine how that happened, I can't say. But I believe that even though that might be the judgment coming out of the court, I think common sense has to prevail. And we can't have a voters list that is filled with so many persons in relation to the population of Guyana, because it creates doubt in the minds of people as to whether or not this list will provide the framework and the condition for a free and fair election. We saw the last elections. There was a recount, and the recount clearly showed a lot of discrepancies. In fact, in the Lower East Coast, we had 49 boxes without any documents whatsoever. No statutory documents to support them, and those ballots were still counted by the Elections Commission. We need to have an electoral process in the elections in this country that after the elections is completed, that all parties are able to accept the results. And so you're talking about electoral reform. In the short term, I believe biometrics might be able to prune that list. If you have biometrics, then you can prune the list. But it's input-output. If persons who are on the list ought not to be on the list, but they're on the list and they have biometrics, then the biometrics will not be able to remove them. So there are going to be a lot of issues coming up in relation to the electoral list. I hope the better sense prevails with the government that we'll try to deal with this list comprehensively and ensure the electoral list is a list of persons who are eligible to vote. Only those who are eligible, and there are biometrics to confirm that. And we don't bring persons on the list because source documents become important. A person from Venezuela cannot just become a citizen in Guyana just like that. You can't just become a citizen overnight. I met a Chinese man who doesn't know English, but he has a driver's license. And he doesn't know English, and he has a driver's license. So these are issues that we have to deal with. So yes, the list is bloated, and it will create problems for elections. We have to have electoral reform. As the People's National Congress reform, I speak specifically to the party along with the opposition. We talked about it. We talk about biometrics at the short term to help clean up that list. But at the same time, it's input-output. If the input is bad, the output is going to be bad. And I think we need to, as a nation, sit back and deal with the issue of the list and have fair elections. Every political party wants to have an advantage, but to what end? To what end we want to have this advantage? We keep going around in circles all the time as a nation. We wouldn't develop. We have to see ourselves serving Guyana, not Guyana serving us. As public officers, there's something called public service. Public service means you serve the public, not the public serve you. And sometimes that's a big challenge.
10 minutes after 10 o'clock, Dr. Gary Best with us this evening, former Guyana Defense Force Chief of Staff, retired Rear Admiral, former head of the Coast Guard, Commodore. Before we go, though, lots of folks would love to see the opposition at press conferences with guys like yourself. You have Eddie Collins, Brigadier Eddie Collins. You have lots of others to talk about these things at the press conferences and make the press conferences heavy in terms of information. That's just my opinion. We need to see that sort of unification within the opposition. Having said all of that, Mr. Best, lots of Guyanese appreciate the fact that you were able to afford us a 1 hour of your time to talk a little bit about what is happening based on your experience. You were head of the Guyana Defense Force. With your years of experience, your knowledge, we are very appreciative of that. But leave them with something to calm them down, just like Burnham calmed the entire nation down back then in the 70s. We're not seeing it here now. People are helter-skelter, running for some sort of direction, some sort of a leader that can touch them and say, look, everything will be okay. Your closing remarks, please, sir.
My closing remarks, I wouldn't try to fit into Forbes' bottom shoes at all. But let me say to the Guyanese people that I have every confidence that the Guyanese Defense Force will do its constitutional duty, which is to defend and protect the state of Guyana to the best of its ability based on its capability and capacity. I think you can trust in the Guyanese Defense Force to do that job. I have every confidence that the joint opposition itself will continue to hold the government's feet when it comes to this issue of Venezuela and total defense. And I believe that we'll continue to do that, and you can have confidence in us. I believe and I hope that the government itself will recognize the importance of coming together in Parliament to pass a specific resolution with all the parliamentarians will sign on to concerning the sanctity of the borders, of our borders, and the inviolability of those borders within the context of our Constitution. I believe if we do those three things, we can instill more confidence in the people of this country. So I ask the people to have confidence in these processes, the Guyanese Defense Force, the joint opposition, and the expectation that the government will join the joint opposition and recognize the importance of the Guyanese Defense Force in the context of having more confidence and motivating the Guyanese people to be calm and not to worry, and that they can depend on the government to ensure that it keeps them safe and secure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Best. Don't be a stranger here, and don't be a stranger at the press conferences of the opposition as well.
The Secretary mentioned that. I wouldn't be a stranger. I wouldn't be a stranger here. I can tell you that. I can speak to that.
Yes.
Here I wouldn't be a stranger. Thank you for having me, and
appreciate it.
My thanks to all the persons who tuned in to listen. And I trust that the information I shared is recognized as national and not personal. Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much, indeed. All right. Retired Rear Admiral, former Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, Dr. Gary Best, sharing his opinions with us and his knowledge and his experience and so forth. And we just want to wish you all the best for this weekend. Don't forget, Wayne Caesar is going to be on from 5 o'clock tomorrow with Over to You. Wayne Caesar, that is, he will be on. And then from 4 to 4:30, we have Attorney at Law Shallon Best. Oh, Shallon Washington. It's Friday night, guys. Please do forgive me. It's Friday night, right? I'm entitled to a little bit of slip up. So Shallon Washington, Attorney at Law, will be on tomorrow 4 to 4:30, followed by not Wayne Best, but Wayne Caesar is from 5 to 6 with Over to You, his program. I want to leave you guys with this here tonight. I really do want to leave you guys with this here so that the nation can be calm, and you can rest assured that Maduro is a bluff. He's a political gangster who should be ignored. He is a bluff. Thank you so much for what Burnham did back then. And just imagine that Burnham was actually the leader of the nation right now, because the country is lacking leadership.
At one point of Guyana's western border with Venezuela, the Renamo River flows into the Cuyuni River, and there is an island at this junction called Ankoko Island of about 2 to 3 square miles. According to the map in existence since 1904, The border runs roughly through the center of Ankoko Island from north to south, so that the western part of the island is Venezuelan and the eastern Guyanese. For some time, in fact during last month, a number of Venezuelans were crossing onto the Guyanese side and have since then been carrying out certain works on our territory. The report of this came to the notice of the government a few days ago only, and an inspection party consisting of senior officials and 2 senior police officers visited the island the day before yesterday, Wednesday the 12th of October. This party verified and confirmed the earlier report received through unofficial channels. In the opinion of the government, this intrusion by Venezuelans constitutes a breach of the Geneva Agreement entered into between the governments of the United Kingdom and Venezuela on the 17th of February 1966, to which agreement the government of Guyana is now a party. And today, I have sent a cable to Dr. Iribarren Borges, the Foreign Minister of Venezuela, strongly protesting the intrusion of Venezuelan personnel onto Guyanese territory and asking that immediate steps be taken by the government of Venezuela to ensure the immediate withdrawal of all such personnel. I have this morning informed the leader of the opposition of the situation and held discussions with him. Meanwhile, I await a reply from the Venezuelan government. I consider it my duty to inform the nation of this latest development and to assure you that every step is being taken to retain our territorial sovereignty by peaceful means. Your government proposes to abide by the terms of the Geneva Agreement and is hopeful that the government of Venezuela will do likewise. You are asked to remain calm and to await further information. Long live Guyana.
Yes, my name is Jasmine Caldata Francis Vietnam, and since 1965 I become a voter, and I always place my ex next to the cup, and what they are doing today, I can't take it. So I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore no more. If they have to lose by 1 vote, they're losing it by data.
This is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you, so call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.